The 80s gave us giants, Billie Jean, Take On Me, and Sweet Dreams, which are songs immortalized in neon and nostalgia. But behind the radio titans were records just as golden, tracks that once lit dance floors, headphones, and teenage hearts before time quietly buried them under greatest hit playlists. These are the forgotten gems, the hooks you remember once they hit your ear, and the tracks that deserve one more spin. These are the 25 underrated 1980s songs you forgot were awesome. Bruce Springsteen, Dancing in the Dark.
I get up in the evening.
When Dancing in the Dark hit the air in 1984, it felt like movement, synths glowing like streetlights, drums punching like a heartbeat, and Springsteen pacing across the track like a man who refused to stay still. It wasn't a loud rebellion, it was quiet urgency, the sound of wanting more from life. A restless energy turned into dance, sweat, and spotlight.
You can't start a fire without.
However, over time, the song was eclipsed by Born in the USA, a cultural phenomenon that overshadowed its siblings. Radio pushed one anthem to the front, while Dancing in the Dark, Springsteen's most personal hit, slipped into memory's back pocket. Yet this track carried frustration and ambition like a fuse under every lyric, a reminder that even legends get tired of waiting for the spark.
Even if we're just dancing.
And that spark came, the biggest single of his career, crowned by a music video where he pulls a young Courtney Cox from the crowd, grinning like he finally exhaled. Forgotten? Maybe, but the moment you hear that opening synth, it all comes rushing back. And if Springsteen burned through the night with Restless Fire, our next track floats through it, shadowed, slow, and hypnotic. Billy Idol, Eyes Without a Face. When Eyes Without a Face arrived in 1983, it felt like a dream caught between fog and neon. Soft synths, drifting vocals, and Billy Idol stripped of his usual snarl, a slow burn ballad instead of a leather-fisted anthem. It was romantic, melancholic, and weightless, a song that floated more than it stomped, a rare moment where the king of sneer showed he could whisper as sharply as he could shout.
Eyes without a face.
Yet despite charting worldwide, it faded in comparison to Idol's louder hits, the punch of Rebel Yell, the swagger of White Wedding, the bark of 80s rebellion. This one was softer, smoother, less obvious on the surface, and with time it slipped under playlists like a shadow on velvet. But listen closer, that mid-song gear shift, the sudden street snarl break, the way it snaps back to silk, that's 80s alchemy at work.
Such a human waste.
It's a song people don't think about until it starts, and then they remember every second of it. Hypnotic, moody, beautifully unlike anything else Idol released. And if this track glides like midnight through the city, our next one bursts in like sunlight through a disco ball, bright, upbeat, and impossible not to move to. Swing Out Sister, Breakout.
Explanations make no sense.
When Breakout hit in 1986, it felt like sunshine pressed into vinyl, bright horns, glittering keys, and a chorus that lifts like confetti in slow motion. It was the sound of optimism turning up the volume, a song built to make commuters tap steering wheels and dancers spin without thinking. Few tracks capture pure, upbeat joy quite like this one. Yet somewhere between power ballads, hair metal, and new wave giants, Breakout slid quietly out of rotation. It was never controversial, never stadium-sized, just perfectly crafted pop that didn't demand attention. Over time, louder songs hogged the spotlight, and this one became a memory people recognize instantly but rarely name out loud. Press play now and everything snaps back like Polaroid color returning. The brass blooms, the beat smiles, and suddenly you are back in the 80s with shoulder pads, bright city nights, and a feeling that life is about to go somewhere good. And if Breakout was optimism in stereo, our next track arrives sugar-coated and loud enough to stick in your brain for days. I Want Candy, Bow Wow Wow.
I know a guy who's tough but sweet.
When I Want Candy blasted through speakers in 1982, it was candy-coated chaos, tribal drums, sharp guitar, a chant that sticks like sugar on the teeth. It was energetic, youthful, a little wild, and a little rebellious. The kind of song that made kids crank the volume too loud, and parents wonder what exactly was happening to pop music.
I want candy.
The funny thing is, almost everyone remembers the hook, but very few remember the band behind it. Bow Wow Wow were cool, stylish, and bold, but they slipped through mainstream memory while the riff lived on forever. Movies used it, commercials used it, the song survived while the name slowly faded.
Someday soon I'll make you mine.
Hit play today, and it still erupts with the same bratty sparkle it had in the 80s. Simple on the surface, irresistible underneath. A track everyone knows even when they think they forgot. And if this one was sweet and loud like neon candy, our next song smooths into something soulful and timeless. Tempted Squeeze? Tempted arrived in 1981 soft, soulful, and unusually smooth for a band known for quirkier new wave edges. With Paul Carrick's velvet vocal delivery and a melody that drifts like late-night car headlights, the song feels like a confession sung just under the breath. It is gentle but unforgettable, the kind of track that sneaks into memory rather than demands it. Yet despite critical praise and steady radio play, Tempted never reached the same mainstream heights as other 80s hits. It was too subtle, too restrained, too honest compared to the flashier pop of its era. Over time, it became one of those songs millions know without realizing they know it, a tune recognized within seconds but rarely mentioned by name. But let it play and everything clicks back into place. The bass slides warm and slow, the chorus blooms like nostalgia you didn't know you were carrying. A forgotten gem that deserves every replay it can get, and if Tempted feels like a soft confession in the dark, our next track shines polished and cinematic, sleek enough to glide through memory like glass. Shattered Dreams, Johnny Hates Jazz. When Shattered Dreams landed in 1987, it felt like polished heartbreak, clean production, glass-smooth vocals, and a chorus that aches without ever raising its voice. The kind of breakup song that doesn't scream or crumble but stands tall with dignity. Even as something beautiful falls apart, it is crisp, controlled, and quietly devastating. The track was a hit at the time, but never claimed the long-term spotlight it deserved. It didn't explode like rock anthems or glitter like synth-pop giants, so as the decade passed, it slipped into the hazy middle ground of forgotten brilliance. But play those first few bars, and anyone who lived through the late 80s remembers exactly how it feels. Time has turned it from a charted single into a rediscovery moment, a track you hear once and wonder how it ever drifted away. Smooth, elegant, and heartbreak wrapped in satin. And if this one breaks with quiet beauty, our next song haunts like a lingering shadow in a room full of mirrors. Cry, Godley and Creme. Cry arrived in 1985 like a ghost in the speakers. Slow, echoing, hypnotic, a song built on atmosphere rather than power, drifting through reverb and heartbreak like a memory that refuses to leave. Godley and Creme didn't chase chart fire or stadium volume here. They created something intimate, surreal, and almost cinematic in its sadness. But what truly etched Cry into 80s culture was its music video, faces morphing into each other as they mouthed the lyrics, a visual effect groundbreaking for the time. It was strange, bold, unforgettable. Yet even with its innovation, the track slipped behind louder songs of the era. Most people remember the trick more than the music itself. Listen now, and it still feels otherworldly, a slow dissolve of emotion set to soft electronic pulse. Fragile, atmospheric, timeless, the kind of song that pulls you into silence when it plays. And if Cry lingered like a dream half remembered, our next track hits like a clean sunbeam through the fog, bright and instantly familiar. The Promise When in Rome.
Don't look to a stranger.
When The Promise drifted onto the scene in 1987, it sounded like longing put to rhythm. Soft synths, heartbeat tempo, vocals that feel like they're reaching out a hand. It has a warmth that builds slowly and wraps itself around you like a memory that almost slipped away. The kind of song that plays during the last slow dance of the night when nobody wants to leave just yet. It never became as iconic as some of its neon-era siblings, but it quietly lived on. Movie soundtracks picked it up, radio rediscovered it now and then, and every time it returned, listeners reacted the same way. Not with, "I know this song," but with, "Oh wow, I forgot how good this is," type of recognition, like a small flood of nostalgia hitting all at once. Hear it now, and it still feels gentle and cinematic, the perfect mix of melancholy and comfort, a forgotten treasure that never stopped shining, just waited to be noticed again. And if The Promise is soft devotion set to synth, our next track leaves gravity entirely, floating into space with a cold glow and a steady pulse. Major Tom, Coming Home, Peter Schilling.
Standing there alone, the ship.
Major Tom, Coming Home landed in 1983 like a liftoff countdown, tense synths, space-cold vocals, and a melody that drifts like a capsule losing sight of Earth. It feels isolated but heroic, melancholy yet weightless, a story told from the void between stars. Where Bowie gave us the astronaut's launch, Peter Schilling gave us the echo that followed. Despite its brilliance, it never carved itself into pop culture as deeply as it deserved to. It charted well but lost space to bigger pop giants and stadium rock noise. Over time, it became a song nearly everyone recognizes but few can name on command. One of those tracks that sparks instant nostalgia, followed by, "Oh yeah, I remember this one." Play it now, and you can almost see vapor trails and blinking control panels. A lonely voyage frozen in time, still glowing like cosmic debris in the dark. And if Major Tom feels like a slow drift into orbit, our next track drops back to Earth under neon lights and cold city streets. Der Kommissar, After the Fire. Der Kommissar hit in 1982 like a neon chase scene. Sharp rhythm, sly vocal delivery, a beat built for city nights and fast footsteps. It feels like graffiti and cigarette smoke and whispered conversations in an alley at 2 a.m. Half pop, half danger, all attitude. The kind of song that makes you move, even if you don't understand every line. It was a hit in its time, but it never became one of the decade's immortal giants. New wave moved fast, trends changed faster, and eventually Der Kommissar slipped from the front of the playlist to the back of the memory vault. Yet the moment it plays, people snap back into rhythm like they've known it forever but just forgot to say its name. It is pure 80s pulse, sharp and stylish, a forgotten adrenaline shot, one listen, and suddenly you remember dancing to it or hearing it through a car radio window rolled halfway down. And if this track runs like headlights across wet pavement, our next song slows everything down into something soft, aching, and cinematic. When Your Heart Is Weak, C. Robin. When Your Heart Is Weak stepped onto the 80s scene like a quiet conversation. Smooth vocals, soft chords, a fragile tone that feels like someone speaking carefully so nothing breaks. It is patient, slow-turning, emotional without theatrics, a love song but not the triumphant kind, more like staring out of a window and wondering where things went wrong. 'Cause when your heart is weak. It was never a massive chart monster, and that might be why it faded behind louder, flashier tracks of its era. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg for attention, instead it settles gently in the background of memory until you hear that first line again and everything unlocks. A song many people know deep down but rarely remember by name. Press play now, and it still feels tender and cinematic, like a letter never sent, delicate, honest, and heartbreak dressed in silk, a forgotten treasure worth rediscovering. And if this track whispers like a confession under dim lights, our next one walks in with polish, strangeness, and a retro smile from another decade entirely. Putting on the Ritz Taco.
If you're blue and you don't know where to go to.
Putting on the Ritz arrived in 1982 like a time machine covered in sequins. A 1930s classic rebuilt with synths, drum machines, and theatrical flair. It sounds vintage and futuristic at the same time. Like Fred Astaire stepping into a neon nightclub. Strange, charming, and completely unforgettable once it starts playing.
Like $1 million trooper.
Yet for all its uniqueness, it quietly slipped out of mainstream memory. It didn't fit neatly into rock, pop, or new wave, so it was embraced in the moment and then gently set aside. Most people recognize it instantly but rarely recall who performed it or how boldly it blended eras long before nostalgia mashups became a trend.
Putting on the Ritz.
Listen again today, and it still feels like theater on vinyl, playful, quirky, polished like chrome, a standout oddity that deserves far more credit than history gave it. And if this track dances with retro confidence, our next one melts into pure 80s. Romance, soft focus, and youthful emotion you can practically feel in your chest. I Melt With You, modern English.
Moving forward, choosing.
I Melt With You floated into 1982 like a warm summer memory, soft guitars, airy vocals, and a sweetness that never tries too hard. It feels youthful and honest, the soundtrack of shy glances and first kisses under streetlights. Not flashy, not loud, just beautifully sincere, a love song that wraps around you like sunlight through a window.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
It became beloved in its time, yet somehow it never grew into one of the era's headline classics. Big stadium anthems and explosive pop hits took the spotlight, while this one lived quietly in movie scenes and mixtape hearts. People know it, they just don't remember they know it until the first chords wash over them and nostalgia hits like a rush.
You seen the difference and it's getting
Play it now and it still feels golden and pure, like a moment you wish you could pause forever. Simple, timeless, unforgettable, once rediscovered. And If I Melt With You glows like young love in slow motion. Our next track arrives stranger and brighter, a catchy swing of pure 80s oddity that never leaves your mind once it sticks. The Safety Dance, Men Without Hats.
We can dance if we want to. We can leave you up.
The Safety Dance burst into 1982 bright, quirky, and proudly weird, a synth line that skips like a jester through a neon courtyard, and lyrics that feel like a joyful protest against conformity. It is playful and defiant at the same time, like someone smiling while breaking the rules right in front of you.
We can dance, everybody.
It was a hit, but novelty often fades faster than power ballads and rock anthems. Over time, the song became more of a cultural reference than a celebrated track. People know the chorus, the dance, the vibe, but the name Men Without Hats often slips through the cracks, a one-of-a-kind sound that the world somehow half remembered and half forgot.
As long as we abuse it, never gonna lose it. Everything will work out.
Hear it today, and it still sparks joy instantly. Unapologetic, bouncy, unforgettable once it starts moving. An anthem for the wonderfully offbeat. And if this song dances sideways with neon grin and absurd charm, our next track leans into glossy synth seduction, pulsing like a mall dream from 1984. Obsession Animotion. Obsession entered 1984 like a spotlight through smoke. Slick synths, glossy production, a rhythm that feels like strutting down a shopping mall runway in slow motion. It is bold, dramatic, a little seductive, and undeniably 80s. The kind of song that takes itself seriously in just the right way, with big emotion and bigger hooks. For a moment, it had real momentum, but history tends to remember the giants and forget the glimmer. As pop evolved and trends shifted, Obsession slid behind more dominant hits. Yet it remains one of the great hidden gems of its decade, a track everyone suddenly remembers the second it begins to play, like nostalgia opening a locked door. It still feels like late-night neon and perfume-heavy department stores, sleek, dramatic, unforgettable, once rediscovered, a song built for montage and motion. And if Obsession glows like polished chrome, our next track arrives brighter still, all sunshine guitar and youthful energy. Love Plus One, Haircut 100. Love Plus One stepped into 1982 like a smile you can hear. Breezy guitars, bright horns, and a rhythm that feels like a walk in the sun with no destination, just the day ahead. It is light, carefree, almost boyishly cheerful, the kind of track that makes everything feel a little brighter without ever raising its voice. It charted well in its moment, but softer joys often fade behind louder icons. Over time, Love Plus One slipped into the background, remembered by melody more than by name, a forgotten treasure in the corner of 80s pop, waiting to be rediscovered by anyone who lets it play long enough to remember how good it feels. Put it on now and the warmth returns instantly. Sunny, jangly, light as air, a perfect snapshot of early 80s optimism. And if this song floats like springtime on vinyl, our next track leans deeper, richer, and emotionally sharper, glowing with powerful vocals and overlooked brilliance. Heart and Soul, T-Pow. Heart and Soul entered 1987 with a sleek pulse and a hypnotic, dual vocal style that felt ahead of its time. Spoken lines slipping into soaring melody, synths simmering beneath chiming guitar, a song that unfolds like a slow-burning reveal. It is emotional but controlled, catchy without being obvious, the kind of track that creeps up on you rather than shouts for attention. Although it charted well, it never reached the iconic status of T-Pow's later hit China in Your Hand, which overshadowed the very thing that made this song special. Heart and Soul became one of those tracks people recognize instantly, yet rarely name correctly, a brilliant piece of songwriting half buried by time and bigger headlines. Listen now, and it still sounds rich, layered, and magnetic, a forgotten highlight of late-decade pop, worth every replay. And if Heart and Soul shimmers like emotional neon, our next track delivers pure vocal power and timeless cool, carried by a voice you never forget once you hear it. Voices Carry, Till Tuesday. Voices Carry arrived in 1985, wrapped in tension and atmosphere. Amy Mann's voice floats between vulnerability and quiet strength, carrying the story of a relationship where words feel dangerous to speak aloud. Soft synths and steady percussion build pressure like a held breath. It is haunting, emotional, and unforgettable once it takes hold.
down. Push this carry.
The song did well on release, but time has a habit of pushing subtle brilliance aside. Bigger, louder hits claimed the decade's memory, while Voices' Carry became a rediscovery moment. The kind of track people remember instantly yet rarely think to name. Like a ghost from the radio that suddenly steps into view again. Hear it today, and it still chills, still aches, still tells the truth with clarity that cuts, a dreamlike relic of emotional 80s pop. And if the song whispers with raw honesty, our next track bounces brighter, built from polished synths and smooth hooks you cannot shake loose once they latch on. Promises, Promises, Naked Eyes. Promises, Promises hit in 1983 with a shimmer of synth and a bittersweet pulse. It is bright but wounded, upbeat yet full of disappointment, like trying to dance through heartbreak with a smile that almost holds. Naked Eyes built a sound that was sleek, catchy, and slightly aching beneath the surface, and this track captures that balance perfectly. It found chart success, yet it rarely gets mentioned when people list defining 80s hits. The song is remembered more by feeling than by title, one of those tracks that sparks recognition the moment the melody returns. Hidden behind bigger singles and louder eras, it remains one of the decade's most quietly enduring gems. Hear it today, and the nostalgia comes back fast, full of color and soft regret, a forgotten favorite that never lost its shine. And if this one sways with wistful pop polish, our next track arrives sharper and funkier, built around a bass line that practically walks off the speakers. Something About You, Level 42. Something About You arrived in 1985 with a groove that felt impossibly smooth, a bass line that walks with confidence, synths that shimmer like Blue City Light, and Mark King's voice cutting clean through the mix. It is polished and rhythmic, the kind of song that makes your shoulders move without permission. Stylish, sleek, and quietly powerful. It charted well internationally, but never became one of the decade's universally recalled hits. Maybe it was too smooth, too tasteful, too grounded under the flashier glow of pop giants. Time let it slip into that odd space where everyone recognizes it, but few remember to name it. A near-perfect single hiding in plain sight. Play it now, and it still feels fresh, like it could drop on the radio tomorrow without sounding dated. Funky yet emotionally honest, a standout that deserves to escape the shadow it fell under. And if Something About You grooves like silk, set to rhythm, our next song drifts softer, dreamier, like stardust floating through a quiet night sky. Under the Milky Way, The Church.
Sound of their breath fades with the
Under the Milky Way arrived in 1988 like a whisper across the night sky. Echoing guitar, distant synth, and a vocal that feels like someone speaking from 1,000 miles away. It is dreamy, weightless, a little melancholic, like standing alone under stars and realizing how big the world really is. A sound built on atmosphere rather than urgency.
under the Milky Way.
It charted, it resonated, and then slowly, it slipped out of the mainstream spotlight. Not forgotten, but tucked into that quiet category of songs people know without knowing how they know it. More soundtrack than headline, more memory than moment. The kind of track that returns unexpectedly and hits harder than it did the first time.
Might have known what you would find.
Play it now, and it still feels infinite. A dream you sink into instead of just hearing. Gentle, cosmic, haunting in the best way. And if this one hangs like fog over a moonlit horizon, our next track charges forward with passion and optimism, bagpipe guitar blazing and hearts wide open. In a big country, In a Big Country burst into 1983 like an open field after rain. Guitars engineered to sound like bagpipes, drums that gallop like a horse across hills, and vocals that aim for the horizon instead of the floor. It is hopeful, panoramic, built for driving with the windows down and the future wide ahead. Few 80s tracks carry this much heart without turning sentimental. It had its moment, but history mostly remembers its texture rather than its title. A song too earnest for cynicism and too unique to mimic, it never fit neatly beside the polished pop dominating the charts. Over time, it faded into near nostalgia obscurity, becoming one of those tracks people love instantly once they hear it again but rarely go searching for. Press play today, and it still rises like sunlight, a reminder of how powerful optimism can sound when paired with grit, bold, uplifting, unmistakably alive. And if In a Big Country feels like running across open earth toward possibility, our next track moves like a neon reflection on wet pavement, sleek, stylish, and sharply new wave. Destination Unknown Missing Persons.
Where do we go from here?
Destination Unknown landed in 1982 with sharp angles and bright tension. Dale Bozzio's high-gloss vocals cut through jittery synths and anxious rhythm like a neon blade. It is stylish, frantic, and restless in a way only early 80s new wave could be. A song for late-night diners, city rain, and youth crashing into possibility without a map.
Destination unknown.
It charted, it mattered, and then time moved faster than it did. New wave was a crowded universe, and even great tracks were swallowed by bigger names and heavier radio rotation. This one became a half memory, instantly recognizable when it plays, yet rarely mentioned until someone presses play again.
Has it all been said and done?
Hear it now, and it still feels electric, nervous, stylish, neon sharp, a forgotten pulse of the decade, alive the moment it returns to the ears. And if this track buzzes like neon against a midnight sky, our next one comes softer and smoother, gliding with synth-pop clarity and emotional ease. Walking Away, Information Society. Walking Away stepped into 1988 with sleek synths, smooth vocals, and a hook that feels like cruising through a city at night. Not aggressive, not melancholic, just effortlessly cool. It's the sound of slipping out of a situation quietly and confidently, like closing a door without slamming it. Clean, modern, and deceptively emotional. It had chart presence, yet it never stayed in the public spotlight the way many 80s hits did. The decade was stacked with giants, and even brilliant songs were easy to lose in the shuffle. Over time, Walking Away became one of those I know this tracks that trigger recognition instantly, but rarely gets name-dropped in conversation. Play it now, and it still shines like chrome. Smooth, synthetic, undeniably 80s in the best way. A rediscovery track that rewards every listen. And if this one glides like headlights across wet pavement, our final song rises soft and dreamlike, carrying the decade out on a breath of pure nostalgia. Life in a Northern Town, The Dream Academy. Life in a Northern Town arrived in 1985 like a slow winter sunrise, soft folk textures, airy production, and a chorus built like a memory echoing off old brick streets. It captures that quiet kind of nostalgia that hurts a little, but warmly so, a moment frozen in time, soaked in reflection, snowlight, and gentle distance. It brushed the charts, stayed just long enough to be remembered vaguely, then faded beneath louder pop currents. But the opening vocal chant remains unmistakable, a sound people know instantly, even if they haven't heard it in years. A song half remembered like childhood, returned like a photograph found in an attic. Hear it now, and everything slows. A whole decade compresses into one tender, wistful sigh, dreamy, cinematic, quietly breathtaking, the perfect closing note for rediscovered 80s gold. These tracks didn't vanish, they simply waited in the dark, and all it took was one listen to bring them back into the light. These were the forgotten gems of the 1980s, songs that drifted out of the spotlight, but never lost their spark. Which of these tracks brought back the strongest memory for you? Drop your favorite in the comments, hit subscribe, and join us next time as we dive into another timeless chapter in music history.